Welcome to Braindrop by VCOM Solutions. Each episode, we talk to IT leaders and experts, explore recent projects, and learn from their triumphs and challenges. We hope today's episode provides you with a unique window into the world of IT, where creativity meets problem solving and technology drives businesses forward. I'm your host, Jethro Castillo. Now let's drop into today's conversation. Today on Braindrop by VCOM Solutions, I am joined by Rob Burkett, the Senior Manager of IT and Operations at Addison Group, a professional services firm specializing in talent solutions and consulting services with over 36 offices and teams nationally. Rob has over 20 plus years of IT and 15 plus years of leadership experience in a number of different industries, and has succeeded in transforming failing programs and divisions through leadership by example and effective people management. Rob, good to have you here.
Great. Thank you for letting me join you on this talk.
So how did you get started in IT?
It was an interesting segue. At first in the corporate world, I started in warehouse management, of all things. And I was always the quote unquote IT guy in my family. And so after about 5 years in warehouse management, I thought, you know what, I probably should just leverage a core skill set that, was somewhat in its nascent stages, way back in the day. And I went and I got my master's of science in information systems management, and I moved into the IT space. After about 5 years, working through various types of development work, I moved into project management, worked as a professional project manager for about 18 years after that. Still in that space, but also moving more into the IT operations, helping to support a brand under Addison Group called Harmony Healthcare, and that's centered out of Tampa, Florida.
Oh, gotcha. So you've kind of been all over the IT space, kind of being in it,
All
and
over the
also
IT space.
managing it. And so all of that, still passionate about it and everything that comes with it?
I'm very, very, very passionate about IT, and I found over time that I've become somewhat of a process wonk without being a process wonk. Not wearing that label outwardly, but I firmly believe in the value proposition that IT brings. In every company, as we were talking previous to the interview starting, every company is a technology company. And IT lives and breathes to support the business objectives of any enterprise. And so any project is not just an IT project. It's also, any IT project is not just a business project, not just an IT project. Every project in IT is also a business project.
Right.
But I really enjoy being able to constantly being able to learn new things and explore new things that are coming out in IT. The advent of, just like everybody's crazy about right now, AI. Cloud computing, and some people are starting to pull away from that a little bit, but IT has been very fun. I've had a great run at IT so far. I'm really enjoying it, and I'm looking forward to it for the next, I don't know how many years.
Right. I feel like what I learned
Absolutely.
6 months ago is outdated, and I feel like what I will learn next month will be outdated in like 2 months. So everything moves so fast. So with that being said, how do you kind of learn and keep up to date with all of the information out there?
That's a really great question. And what I do is I try to rely on my professional network, CIOs that I've been fortunate to not only just connect with, but also form a relationship with and get some of their ideas. I'm also always looking at, publications like Wired Magazine, and other publications like that. I pay attention to what's coming out on CIO.com. And I get numerous newsletters and email that I'll review, and then I'll take a look at the technologies, the various, I won't plug the websites themselves, but the various learning platforms that are out there, and then I have access to through work. I'm constantly learning. In fact, I'm actually studying for a cloud certification at this point in time.
Oh, nice.
While doing my regular day job.
And with all of the information that you're taking in, what are your thoughts on the current state of IT?
We're seeing this convergence of AI and cloud computing, but also cybersecurity. And sprinkle a little bit on top of quantum computing coming into play to some degree, and what that might mean. I would love to learn more about. I started looking into it. I did the Microsoft AI challenge. One of the challenges that they put out there earlier this year, and just it's amazing everything that can be done. But it's also, you have to approach it cautiously, right? I know some enterprises are worried about their business intelligence being shared on a public AI platform like ChatGPT. And so some people are moving to internal AI models that they will then have to train. But that takes a lot of diligence and a lot of rigor. But very, very excited about everything that those three things I had mentioned before can bring to a table to help the enterprises move forward.
We've talked about how this is stuff that we're learning, but obviously this is something that's happening or relevant to your organization and what you're doing right now. So before we really jump into what's going on with your organization and and the projects that you've undertaken, tell us a little bit about, provide some context about your IT team and environment. So how long have you been there? How many team members do you have? And, how many employees rely on this team?
Sure. So we're a rather small IT shop. Addison Group and its subsidiary brands are primarily buy versus build. And so what we tend to rely on within our IT team is keeping it lean, but also very highly skilled in the BI space, in the infrastructure space, and also in the cybersecurity space, because of all the data that we have to be, for all intents and purposes, we have to provide phenomenal stewardship for all the data that we have.
Sure.
And then also being able to provide to the rest of the business and supporting the business what that data means and what it can be used for. Not just these are candidate profiles, but what's the content of that candidate profile that, without violating personal private information, can we understand about what's happening with the market going forward? So that's been very exciting and very much a challenge for the team, and also ensuring that we are managing the day to day and keeping the operation going. I would say we're probably a team somewhere in the neighborhood between 40 and 50 people. Most of it centered in our infrastructure and user services and what I'll call data engineering.
How many employees rely on this team?
I want to say the entire company with all the brands is somewhere in the neighborhood of about 1,500 people.
So 40 to 50 people to support all of that, pretty much.
Right. Yeah, it's a very lean shop.
So what's kind of top of mind for this team? What have you guys been really focusing on and trying to implement for your organization?
So we just recently completed our entering into our phase 2 of a CRM implementation, which is kind of really changing the whole business process model for the core business of Addison Group, and very soon up and coming the subsidiary brands. That's been a key push over the last year and a half or so for the organization. We've had great success with it. There's been obviously challenges because that when you're implementing a new CRM system, you're going to have those challenges because part of people's daily lives will change.
Right.
And so that's been probably a key thing, is focusing on that people change management aspect of things, but also cybersecurity. We've contracted with a key vendor in managing data and how it lives and breathes and does anything escape to the dark web. So that was one of the more recent cybersecurity initiatives that we've done. So that's been very critical for us, and it might be some of the low hanging fruit for me to touch, but one of the key things that we also manage on a regular basis is simply supporting office moves, and the challenges that would present. Just the very simple small things that have to be paid attention to, and where the devil is in the details. As simple as making sure everybody's key fob works to get them in the door.
Sure.
Right. So, that's some of the challenges that we're facing and some of the hurdles that we've recently, gotten over.
Regarding the CRM system, what are the goals for it? Why did you guys decide to take on this project at this point in time?
So that project was taken on really to kind of bring into the organization some of the best in class that a top tier CRM system would provide, and really also standardize things across the entire Addison Group and the umbrella of Addison Group and its subsidiary brands. And so it's going to be, as everything like this should be when you're impacting an entire enterprise, it will be a measured approach on how things are done. But it's really about optimizing processes and standardizing processes. So then in turn, here we go in my process wonkery. Then in turn, you look at points of failure and you can change those, right? And kind of apply both not only just a Six Sigma perspective, but also a Lean Six Sigma perspective. How do we not only optimize the output, but how do we optimize the process itself?
Every step of the way. Yeah.
Right.
I like how you keep on mentioning that you're not, I consider myself a huge process nerd too, but it's not something that I like tout on my chest, but it's so important. And I think some people have brought this up in other episodes too, of just like, yeah, it's important to make sure you're optimizing the output, but really to optimize the output, every step of the way, you have to check and make sure that that's optimized too. And like you said, the devil in the details, right? It's just every step, can it be just a little bit better today than it was yesterday? And that just has huge results. But a lot of the times, right, you start a project and you want the end goal, and then sometimes the process gets lost. And so I do love that sort of focus. You mentioned some challenges that you've experienced and overcome. Are there any challenges that you are foreseeing in these projects that you're implementing that you will have to tackle?
I think the key thing is, because Addison Group and its subsidiary brands are essentially sales and staffing companies, right? We're essentially, the staffing company is essentially a sales company. And so making sure that we really have a good microscopic view on the value proposition of IT and how it best supports how Addison Group wants to move forward. Down to, how do we optimize our vendor load for, some of the managed service providers that we have, that are contracted with some of the brands that we are working with. We have great partnerships in place, but at the same time, everybody has to take sometimes a harder look at, the spend on things to make sure we're, that the juice is worth the squeeze. Right.
Sure.
So that's probably going to be one of the challenge. I think I would call it challenging in that you have to look at the numbers and decide on the numbers and work based on numbers. And, we talked about process wonkery or being a process nerd. That can be a very, the Latin root of decide is to cut, right? So it's being decisive and being data oriented and using data to make good decisions moving forward. And so that will probably present itself some challenges. We may have to do some integrations with some of our brands that are, that might be, a little bit, mildly disruptive, but at the end of the day should be a black box for our internal customer.
Not that I'm being negative, but I feel like I've asked a lot about challenges and we've talked a lot about challenges, but let's celebrate a few things. What are some things that you've implemented or are implementing, whether big or small, that, we can celebrate for Addison Group and organization, at least from an IT perspective?
I would say as much as I talked about challenges with the CRM implementation, that was also a very good victory for the team, because and kudos to them, they did a phenomenal job with just putting in the work and getting things done. We also had a recent change with one of our subsidiary brands, a very simple thing of security remediation and just getting adoption of that change pushed through across something in the neighborhood of 300 resources, where we essentially impacted their daily work life. But we have now achieved a high degree of adoption across that. And so it's been small victories, but you take the small victories where you can. And then you just, of course, stealing something from Tony Robbins, people tend to try to take lessons learned when they fail, but they did fail to do so when they win.
Yeah.
So I'm always looking at both.
Yeah. No, I love that perspective. Actually, funnily enough, it might be one of the first times I've ever really been reminded of it in that way. I always go, you learn from your failures, and celebrate your successes. But very little am I also reminded, but also learn from your successes and grow from that as well.
Exactly.
So thanks for that reminder. Um, you mentioned, when you implement a change such as, this CRM overhaul, if you will, a lot of people's daily lives are going to change. And a huge part of implementing a change like this is change management, right? And making sure that people adopt it smoothly. Do you have any insight on how to make that a smooth process when sort of implementing a change like this?
The approach that I have and the insight that I feel I can share can be pretty much applied, whether it be a project or an operation. And it's really about conveying to folks the vision of what we're trying to achieve. And in some cases, their input's going to be taken in and we're going to hear them. And in some cases we'll have to, we'll, if it's a compliance effort that we have to comply with a particular regulatory standard, we have to explain compliance is necessary and therefore you'll have to jump on board with us. But really it's about, conveying that vision and what we're trying to achieve, but also understanding the pain points that the people are seeing, right? Because everybody's different. One of the things I love to say is, people are flexible. They just don't like change. Right. So it's really about, that vision of things. And it's, it sounds like, in a way that you're engaging in some degree of puffery, that it's fluffy and it's soft and it's this long-term view and it's not tactical. Well, I don't think people just come to work just to enjoy the tactical work that they do. They want to know what their tactical work is contributing to. Right. And so that's what I try to bring to the table whenever there's a new initiative that we're trying to kick off or trying to optimize, some parts of the operation, just to make things better.
Does this change only affect those 1,500 employees, or does this also go out to, do customers sort of face this change as well? Or is it really?
At the end of the day, it would optimize the output of the work of the businesses that we support, and therefore improve our stance in the eyes of our end consumers, right? Whether it be companies that we're staffing for, or whether it's candidates that we're interviewing, right? If we've optimized our internal processes, then things will flow much smoother for them.
You guys develop it, you guys grow with it, you guys see it, so you guys understand all its bells and whistles and how it works, and that it's better. But I can imagine if I was seeing it for the first time, I don't know where to start. I don't know how to even navigate that. A huge part of change management is making sure that the user understands the vision, but is also not overwhelmed by the new thing that they're consuming. And so how do you go about making sure that people can use it from day one and that it's a kind of a smooth transition there?
Yeah, I kind of go back to, some of the, older perspectives on things. Maybe now using some more newer terms instead of early adopters, do we have people that are digital natives, right? With, your Gen Ys and your, Gen Zs that are coming into the workforce. These are folks and be 100% honest, as a Gen Xer, I grew up as technology was quote unquote growing up. Right. And I was very much an early adopter of technology. But in every effort, it's getting to those folks that are excited about change, want to provide input, will be that early adopter. Right. And then also in some way, shape or form, kind of pulling those people that might have resistance, because you want to figure out what those points are and address them as early as possible so that you can really hydrate the entire organization and have an effective input.
I mean, at the end of the day, right, when you implement something like this, getting feedback from the users is paramount, right? Because you need to know how you can improve it. I mean, at the end of the day, sometimes you just have to do it and then they'll tell you how it can be improved. And that's where the magic happens, right?
Exactly. And it's funny because as you know, in project management, what I've always endeavored to do when there's training involved, first things first, I would always get quality assurance people. They'd be at my kickoff, right? And sometimes they're like, why am I here? You guys haven't even started yet. No, I want you to understand the vision of what we're trying to achieve.
That's awesome, actually.
And get you engaged early.
No, I
Training
like
the same thing, right? I want you to understand my vision and what we're trying to achieve. And then that way, they in most cases will help inform how the project or process or operation will get formed.
Yeah.
Because they'll be able to say, the QA folks, is this testable? Right? The trainers, can I train this?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And does it make sense to even try to, or is it a black box and you just, or is it a black box and everybody should be made aware? Or is it a black box that nobody needs to know about? It just happens to work in the background and it's just a machine.
Sure. I like how you said that because it goes back to process again, where you're not just making something and then inviting people at the end when it's all said and done. Every step of the way, you are inviting the correct people to say, hey, like check me here before I go on to the next step because it's going to take much longer later on. And so inviting the right people will only make it a smoother transition later on. And like you said, that vision, right? That buy-in, you make them feel passionate just as you are. And now the project moves so much more smoothly and it kind of works on its own because everybody wants to contribute.
And actually what I like to do is I like to take that term buy-in and change it to ownership. Because if I can get and convince or persuade or share the vision and the story well enough, and also share with somebody else or a key individual or stakeholder what their stake is in what we're trying to do, I can also convey to them that they have a degree of ownership in the success of the outcome. Right. And when people have ownership, they will step up, and because by providing people ownership, you're immediately telling them, hey, you're valuable to this, right? You're important to this. And so we want you as active participants. We want you to join us in helping us move this forward.
And I think there's a little bit too of, you said it, but this change will affect you for the better. Here's how it will make here's how the outcomes will improve your workflow, your life. And so there's that ownership because it's like, well, now I want to do well with this because it will make my life better once it's all ready. So, I like that. I like that shift too from buy-in to ownership. It's, I'm going to start kind of using that in my vocabulary.
Feel free.
As well. I'll be like, Rob told me this, and just give you credit every single time. Like, Rob told me
one
ownership.
Piece of value I've provided in this conversation.
Well, let's add a little bit more, as somebody who has grown up with technology, has been in IT, what are your kind of go-to tools and strategies that you recommend people kind of learn more about or use for their projects, for their IT organization?
So here's where I'm going to, with some people that know me rather well, when they listen to this discussion, I'm going to kind of leave the reservation a little bit. Particularly in the term of agile processes. They have their, I'll talk about the analogy. If the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem will appear to be a nail.
A nail, yeah.
Right. And so I think, agile came about and everybody wanted to do it and jump in. And now there's maybe, I think, to some degree, agile fatigue. The scaled agile framework came along and, agile purists didn't like it one single solitary bit, but I think I lean more towards that. And not just because I come from a waterfall background, because a waterfall was pretty much the first project management methodology. The notion of having a business plan and having a strategic plan and a roadmap, and not that the roadmap can't change. Right? That's not what that means. It's not written in stone, but having that longer term view and then in an agile way, meeting that vision. I I think is key because it helps the business understand how IT can be a good partner, right? In some environments, what I'm seeing doesn't apply. And I completely understand it. But in a lot of environments, what I'm seeing would apply. I feel like the environment that I'm in right now, having that view and saying, because we're buy versus build, we could take that kind of perspective. If we were developing a technology product, obviously we'd be more agile. We'd be more rapid application development oriented, right? Sure. So it's kind of a mixed bag. I wouldn't call it wagile as the people sometimes call waterfall and agile. I wouldn't call it that, but it's kind of a mixed approach. So I think taking a view of, making sure that you have the right skill set across your team and that understanding in your managing of things, that's what's probably the best thing that you can have. But also this unfailing drive towards re-educating yourself and your team, right? Always having that, right? Iron sharpens iron kind of aspect. And we are on a constant, and it's the Japanese Kaizen approach. Always improving, right? I'll mention somebody's name and I'll mention a brand. Jeff Knoll, who worked at Disney. He talks about Disney's aspect, our perspective of changing, going that extra inch, right? Not that extra mile. Some people say, go that extra mile because not everybody's there. Go that extra inch is what Jeff Knoll has said, because it's an incremental thing, right? And as you go another inch the next day, or, it's that incremental improvement is also one of the key things that I think that every organization, every leader should drive people toward.
There are definitely a lot of just nuggets of wisdom right there, but there are two that I really want to really highlight, at least from my point of view. One, that Japanese Kaizen approach, or that continuous incremental improvement, right? Today, or even in this moment, I'll be better than I was in the previous moment. And you measure that, but you celebrate that too. And some days are bigger than others, but all you should be thinking about within the Kaizen approach, to make it simple, is I'm going to be better now than I was before, and just always having that sort of mindset. But I think the other thing that you said that was so awesome is, waterfall, agile, these methodologies to really improving how your process works and your workflow. I like how you said, you don't want to use the word wagile, but it's never one or the other. It usually depends on the situation and the people that you are working with. You have to be able to be adaptable and unlearn things and relearn things and understand, oh, wait, it's important to implement this type of thing from this methodology because of what the situation warrants. And I just love that idea of, you're giving a hammer, everything is a nail. If you only adopt agile, when you run into a situation or a scenario where agile isn't the thing, now you're trying to mismatch a methodology with a situation that doesn't work. And I just love that idea of, you have tools that you use depending on the situation. I just love that flexibility, that adaptability.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. If I may, I want to add on, I worked at an organization once, and I asked them what their project management methodology was when I started, and they said, well, it's Six Sigma. And I was kind of thrown a loop on that, right? Because it's not every project is a Six Sigma project, right? Particularly if you're building something outright. If you're creating something brand new, it can't be a Six Sigma project because you're not going through the Six Sigma phases. So, and what was ironic is they just simply called the phases of a waterfall project by the Six Sigma phases. When we have a hammer, everything's a nail, right? Very much that approach.
Very practical to life in general, where there's never a one size fits all for anything. And you have to be able to understand
nothing at all.
Certain things. Nothing at all. Exactly. Well, I only have two more questions for you. And the first one is, what's next for you and what's next for team? What are the big goals moving forward, especially after the CRM and implementation and stuff like that?
Yeah. So we're really focusing in the future on optimizing our IT operations, and also, exploring innovative technologies to really help drive competitive advantage. Right. And that, some of this is going to apply where we apply a keen focus on data analytics and maybe potentially, using integration of AI-driven insights in our decision-making process. And also in that vast richness of data that we have.
And the last question is, and this is my favorite, because you get to really leave with any word of wisdom that you could possibly want. But is there any final thoughts? Are there any final thoughts that you want to share that you didn't get to during the course of this conversation?
I think just kind of maybe just to sum things up, I think it's essential to approach, IT with a business and strategic mindset. We have to view technology as a catalyst for organizational growth and organizational optimization. And then, just again, re-educating, and maybe a better way to phrase it, continual adaptation and evolution, right? And in light of industry and technology trends, and just, a commitment to, it sounds probably a little bit too flighty, but a commitment to excellence, right? Because excellence matters. Precision matters. Doing the right things the right way because we don't have time to do them over again, right? That's something that drives me quite a bit. And then at the same time, that while going through the grind of all that, take some time to really look back, be introspective. And this means from a personal and from a business perspective. Businesses should be introspective. Businesses should be self-aware and know where it is that things can be improved and know where they've succeeded and celebrate those things. But take, in the life of a business, it's hard to know how long this should take and when it should happen, but take that moment to breathe and rest. And then, it's the OODA loop, for lack of a better term: observe, orient, decide, act, right? Observe where you are. Take that moment to observe where you are. Now orient yourself to your vision. Now decide how you're going to do that and then act, right? Very much a Navy SEAL kind of thing. I've got a friend of mine that's a trainer, former Navy SEAL, and I've kind of tapped into some of his knowledge.
Now I'm kind of tapping into that knowledge because I'm like, that's a golden nugget too. I'm actually going to take that in my life. I'm like, all right, observe, orient, decide, act. So, well, Rob, you said at the beginning, like, I hope I can be a good guest, and I can say right now at the end of it, you've been an absolutely incredible guest. Thank you so much for your time, your wisdom, and your expertise. I'm very glad to have this conversation with you, Rob.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the time.
VCOM Solutions is here to help make your IT projects and day-to-day operations as easy and efficient as possible. If you'd like to see how VCOM can help your organization save time and money, request a demo at vcomsolutions.com/demo. Do you work in IT? Be a guest on Braindrop. Go to vcomsolutions.com/Braindrop guest to sign up. Thanks again for dropping in. Don't forget to subscribe, and you can find us on social media at VCOM Solutions. Until next time.